Hello and welcome to the Football Legends podcast. It's Thomas and Marcus here again. It's been way too long
Too long.
since we've done the Football Legends podcast or any podcast in general. I think it's nearly October. I think 6 months ago, Marcus.
Must be, mate.
Too long. Business has been hectic. Work hectic. Christmas madness. COVID
But,
madness.
but this is what we're here for. This is what we love.
And this is where we're back. And we're going to the most hated team in my lifetime. Anyway, no, I'm joking. Now,
Teach
look,
it specifically just for this.
let's call it as it is. You know, we all watch English football, whether it's Premier League.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for you, it's League One. We're Bolton at the moment.
Listen, we're not on about Bolton tonight. We're not on about
We've
Bolton.
done that. But no, look, getting serious, I mean, Ireland have failed to qualify for so many tournaments in the last 20 years that we always watch England. Like, I've never of this opinion that I don't want England to win or I don't want them to do well. You know,
Yeah.
half of the bleeding English team over the years has been United players and stuff like that. So I've always wanted to watch them. Wanted
Or
them
a
to do
few
well.
Irish players.
Yeah, true. But you know what I mean. I never got that argument from an
Yeah.
Irish point of view. But
I'm saying, mate. I'm saying.
summing up just before we get into it in detail, to be an England fan, Marcus, it has to be equally heartbreaking as exciting.
Well, it's pretty much similar to being a Bolton fan, really, at the moment. But I mean, it is. It's nothing will ever top the excitement of watching your team in a World Cup or a European Championship or whatever. But there's that much what comes with it. To be fair, it makes you love it even more sometimes because you think, well, this is our year, and obviously we see it all the time. It's coming home and this and that. But to be fair, it adds to it all. But a certain amount of the older generation kind of they wash their hands with that sort of stuff now because they're just used to disappointment in a way.
Yeah, well, it
But
is, and I think you know, looking from the outside in, we love to see the English fail. Though. You know, you do because you just get so ahead of yourselves. You
oh
know that way,
yeah,
as like the game, there hasn't been even a ball kicked in the tournament, and it's like you're
it's
already
already coming home.
celebrating winning it. You
Yeah.
know that way, and that's what just fucking pisses people off. But I mean,
Is
of the
it not?
last
Is
20,
it not lovable at the same time as well? Though?
it is for like a week, and then it's just unbearable. Do you know what the Euro 2021 or whatever you want to call it, considering it was last year, was
Yeah,
actually brilliant. The whole because the pandemic was so shit, and you know everything
yeah,
was just so negative, and then to see England do so well and the positivity, like obviously all the television we watch in Ireland, bar a couple of channels, is all English television as well.
yeah.
So everything is it's coming home, and the fucking weather was unreal, and
Oh,
it was just amazing just watching it. As much as you know, we liked just winning in the group stages and the round of
as soon as it
16.
started
And as you
getting
get
to
that
nitty gritty.
closer, it's like, nah, I have to stop this now.
Yeah,
Um, but look, let's get into it really to where the modern era, I suppose, if you want to call it that, for
yeah,
English
yeah,
fans is
yeah,
always Euro '96, isn't it?
yeah.
Um,
Obviously,
I was a bit too young. I was only born in '94, so I don't really remember other than watching it back. But I mean, just take me basically through your feelings around '96.
so again, obviously, only a few years between us, like, but it was kind of my first tournament as we'd go. Obviously, we were hosting. There was a big buzz around the place. Venables were in charge, and yet again, as stated so many times, we had a class squad
Yeah,
again, brimming with quality. Gazza were playing in Scotland at the time for Rangers, but he were one of the best players in the world. I know he's been touted that so many times, and then the strikers that we had coming around that time, and everyone,
outstanding.
it just felt right that home soil. It were going to go Wembley, fans were behind us.
Yeah.
We do make this like every tournament where we say it's coming home and everything, but that's where it started. Similar, do you know what I mean?
Well, that's
Even,
where the song came from,
yeah, well,
wasn't it?
that's it all built up with Badil and Skinner and what have you, and the hype all got to it. But as tournaments go, though, in pure realism, mate, the quality, it was one of the best standard tournaments that they've had international wise.
Yeah,
Obviously, you're missing the likes of Brazil and Argentina and what have you out of the tournament, but the
yeah,
standards of the team from especially like mid 90s through to like mid 2000s, a lot of the top European teams, especially, the teams were just brimming with world class footballers.
yeah.
And it gets thrown out too obviously now or too leniently like world class
World
or
class.
legend or
Yeah,
whatever. But back then, that's when it actually meant something. And these squads were just packed full of world-class players.
Absolutely. And I'm just looking here at a couple of the results, and even if we just take the two semi-finals before we get into England specifically, France and the Czech Republic, and
Oh,
both games went to penalties. And I'm looking at the penalty takers: Zidane, Djorkaeff, Nedved, Berger, Poborski, Blanc,
behave.
Lizarazu. Like, that's only one game. And then if
That's
we go
one
to the
game.
England game, then Sheringham, Gascoigne, Tla, Shearer. They're some of England's
Yeah.
takers:
Muller,
Ziege,
Bierhoff, Ziege.
Strunz,
Oh,
Kuntz.
yeah,
Um,
he was a cunt.
he was. But the standard, as you say, at that time, you're carrying on from that kind of the Barcelona, AC Milan dominance of the early 90s
Yeah,
through then
100%.
into the French dominance in the
Yeah,
late 90s.
yeah,
It was outstanding period of football in
yeah.
Europe, and it
Brilliant.
was
So
it
good
was
to watch.
outstanding.
And
You know,
it's like you have your odd teams, like you mentioned. It's like nobody expected Czech Republic to get to the final.
mm,
And they did. Croatia had a great team at that time with Davor Šuker, Jani, Prozinecki.
yeah,
Players. There were a couple of players who were playing Premier League, like Stimac were playing the French team. You've got Desai, Djorkaeff, Zidane, all them, and
yeah,
Holland. We know how good Holland were is progressing us through the years, and obviously we met them in the group stages and give them an hiding,
yeah.
and that just shows how good we were. But for me, obviously, we're going to delve into the later realms as it goes on. But it's like Venables is the last manager for me, or certainly the only one who didn't do what the FA told him, didn't give a shit about what media or fans were saying about what team he were picking or what players he were picking. He knew what he were doing. That's what he were picking, and that's what he were doing.
Yeah,
And the media could circulate around rats going, "Oh, why is he not playing 4-4-2? Why is he not picking Gascoigne and Inson? Why is Matt Manaman out on right and Anderton's in middle and this and that?" But he stood by his choice, and we see now the tournament went. So
exactly. And we'll get into it. But just briefly before we start in Euro 96, you touch on Venables. Your 1994 World Cup is a disaster.
a complete disaster, yeah.
Not qualifying, and we just said that England team, the selection of players at the time, it was, you can't fathom that they didn't qualify. So Venables comes in at that point, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he knows if we're going to do something with this generation of players that we've got here, I need to build the foundation, which he did. Obviously, Tony Allen's with a rock at the back, but he just had to get some sort of organisation in there and a bit more. What would you say? Well, man management before you go
Yeah.
anywhere in
He
dealing with
put
these.
trust in them, didn't he?
That's it, and he gave them the belief. He kind of said, like, "Luke, you've got the ability, and it's about time that you go out and just start proving it, rather than people talking you up." And again, we'll revert to the media and what have you.
Mm,
Instead of people just blowing smoke up your ass and doing whatever, you've got to actually go out there yourselves and do what you're capable of doing.
exactly. And if we look at, I think we briefly spoke about this in the WhatsApp group actually with Robbie, who can't be here today, he has COVID.
R.I.P.
Um, yeah, R.I.P. Kenner. But the team from 1990 that were eliminated, I think there was like three players that survived
Yeah,
to
Gazza,
make the
Pierce.
96 team. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
Platt was on the mark. I can't
David
remember who the
Platt,
third
yeah.
one
Oh,
was.
yeah, you're right, yeah. Pierce and Gascoigne, yeah.
So it just shows he really did say, okay, it's a new era. Obviously, he still had a couple of experienced heads, like you say. But
Yeah,
if we quickly run through that team that played, the picture at the start, that we went through, that is the team, isn't it? That is your 11 that
yeah,
started. That was your top class.
yeah, that's his strongest 11, what he could get out in that tournament side. Obviously, strikers, the options that he still had, you've got Ferdinand. I think Fowler were in the squad, but he didn't play.
Yeah.
But it's like Les Ferdinand he were tit for tat with Shearer and Sheringham. And now, before the tournament, Shearer hadn't scored for 2 years for England.
I couldn't believe that. I
Yeah,
watched actually the 96 documentary with him,
oh, it's
and he hadn't
unbelievable.
scored
Yeah.
for 2 years, which when you think of Alan Shearer,
Oh,
scoring for 2 games would be unusual for Shearer, let alone 2 years for England.
but it's like you say about how Venables challenged the players and got the best out of them in that
Yeah,
way. He persevered with Shearer because he knew what sort of a weapon he could be
yeah,
if he started finding the net. And obviously,
the machine.
his decision come true. But like I said, the actual squad and the strongest 11 what he had out, it was certainly the best players in England at that time. Anyway, there's no doubt about that. And
Yeah, and as we saw, they end up getting to the semi-final. But we take it from, the pre-season, shall we say, prior to the tournament,
Dentist,
which which was one of the greatest goals in the European Championship history, one of the greatest celebrations. But obviously the context surrounding it is they obviously go on a bender in Hong Kong.
Standard.
Gaz's birthday it was.
Shock
And
horror.
and they went out, and the famous picture of Sheringham with the bleeding top off and everything else. But I don't know whether you know this, but do you know why they had no t-shirts on?
No, to be fair, I've never heard that bit. No.
Brilliant, right? Brian Robson was one of Terry Venables'
I remember Robbo being on there.
Was a coach. And when they were all in the boozer and they were getting well-oiled, Robbo's a drinker, you know that. Like, he could keep it going with any of them.
Yeah.
Apparently he went up and said, lads, just take it easy. A few bleeding cameras around there or whatever. And I think Stuart Pearce came up and said, fucking calm down, you, and ripped his T-shirt from his neck down to his stomach.
And it was a swanky one as well.
Yeah, and Robson just kind of shrugged his shoulders and walked away. So everyone got the T-shirt ripped. And that's why they're all fucking in bits, ripped open and all. Sheringham said it wasn't even anything. He said they just done it to Robson and it was good enough for him. But then we were all getting our shorts ripped. It's brilliant. But obviously, we know that caused a major controversy at the start of the tournament, which it wouldn't be the English media if it wasn't.
If they didn't, exactly. And I mean, listen, half of players back then played half cut anyway. You're talking Tony Adams, he's renowned obviously for being a big drinker. Yeah. You've got Gazza Mix, who's the main man.
Yeah.
And obviously, Sheringham he were partial to a bit.
Teddy loved it, yeah. Teddy loved the gargle, absolutely. Yeah. But look, we get to the tournament. Okay, first game, Wembley, 77,000.
It's electric
at that stage. Absolutely on fire. 30 years since '66 winning the World Cup, and a damp squib.
Yeah. Well, they played it. Obviously, the tournament. Obviously, when the Euros first got cancelled in 2020, they did the replay of '96 on ITV for fans, and obviously, I put Zara through her paces and gave her a bit of an history lesson, made her sit down and watch it. Obviously, she thanks me for that.
Yeah.
But I mean, the way we started the game, and I mean, I only watched this like 8 months ago or so, and I mean, the energy and the football we were playing were brilliant. Obviously, we got an early goal. Shearer scored after about 20 odd minutes or whatever it were. But I mean, again, Switzerland, they had a good front too. Saprisat and Cirkelmaz were well known around Europe. I think Saprisat were playing with Dortmund. He just won Champions League, I think, around that time. And I just think they got a bit complacent. They went 1-0 up, and Switzerland rarely having a kick at ball, to be honest. And Gazza were in full flow. You were doing Rabona passes, and crowd would go in and what have you. And then, like you say, they give a bit of a petty penalty away, a bit of an arse on ball, if I could stay on pace here. But it just changed the whole atmosphere. And then again,
and it was like less than 10 minutes to go as well.
Less than 10 minutes to go, so there weren't much of a chance to claw it back and get the 3 points. Media straight away, bang,
hammered them. And all of a sudden, all the pictures again of the boozy night out, and all of this shit comes back up. And it was at this point that I saw that Sheringham gave an interview with one of the newspapers, and they turned around and said it wasn't like we were on a 3-week bender. He said it was one night. He said that the media need to get over themselves, type of thing. And he kind of said, like, no one would ever really question the media at that stage. Like, they were super powerful in the 90s. Yeah. He said, but it just had to be said that they were starting to affect the players, performances and stuff. But, I mean, the tournament really started from the next game, didn't it?
The Scotland game. Yeah. Well, obviously, the rivalry goes without saying. It's monumental. The players had that added pressure because of the subpar performance in first game. And there was, similar to Fordham this time around, we all love the Gascoigne hype, don't we? We love Gazza. I love Gazza. And I know you're fond of Gascoigne, and we know how good he was. But
outstanding,
he had a lot of pressure on him in that tournament as well, Gazza, because he were absolutely destroying Scottish League for Rangers. So again, he's coming up against Scotland.
Yeah,
there's more eyes on it because
so
Rangers fans. There's so much riding on the game, and for him to do what he did in that game, let's have it right, around '96 time, Colin Hendry, one of the best defenders in Britain anyway, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely, he was solid anyway.
Yeah, Braveheart as he would
Premier
call
League winner. Only the year before, 95
Yeah,
with
yeah, yeah.
Blackburn. So
And
yeah, he's top defender at that stage.
yeah, and Gaza made him look like Maguire.
Thanks very much for that one.
Yeah,
But
but yeah, as you
the
go,
most
atmospheres.
the most iconic goal, probably the most iconic English goal ever, I would think,
I'd say so.
in my lifetime anyway.
In my
You know,
lifetime, it's
talking
up there. Obviously,
66 is different, you know.
you've got Gaza in '96. You've got Becks against Greece with
Greece,
a with a qualifier, and then obviously a win against Argentina is
mm.
quite memorable. But yeah,
David Nugent against Andorra,
he's
tap
one and
in,
only goal, and he's
yeah,
got
legendary.
But I mean, yeah, you're dead right. Gaza's goal against Scotland. I'm pretty sure if you ask any England fan, as strong as they like for eight on team and players, but we all have got an art and we all love them. But if you asked any of them which goal stands out,
That's it.
it's got to be that one,
Yeah,
100%.
absolutely. I think so anyway. And the celebration, obviously, then kind of
Well,
just
that made it even more,
put to
didn't it?
bed, didn't it? It kind of just said, right, that's it. You know, that's the end of that. It kind of came full circle. Teddy and Gascoigne, but Terry Venables said the next game was probably the greatest English performance that he's ever seen.
Oh,
And at that stage, like you said earlier on, that Dutch team
oh,
were phenomenal.
you got
But
the De Boer brothers, Seedorf, Davids, Cliver.
Clivert,
Yeah,
you know, England made them look like a Sunday League team, didn't they?
yeah, and for me, that obviously we were talking about the tournament. The tournament in a whole is one of my memories, but that is it's one of my most vigorous early memories of football, and especially a big tournament anyway. And I remember it right. I was in my bedroom at my mum's, literally sat on my bed watching it on my own. I weren't even, no, I spent majority of the tournament with my dad. Whatever time we had, he'd either drag me in a pub or we'd be watching it at home
Yeah.
or what have you.
No choice. Yeah.
No choice. But that specific game, I was in my bedroom on my own, and I knew it were a big game. I spoke to my dad on phone like before the game. He's like, make sure you watch England game, this, and I was like, right, got in my room buzzing. And obviously, one image, he just the bright orange kit. I were amazed at then, like 6-year-old, like, oh, look at this, white against orange, and
Yeah.
because obviously I knew my football, slowly started coming into it, but that'll always stick with me, that game. And it's the second Shearer one where
Yeah.
he hammers it into top
The
corner.
top corner, yeah.
Yeah.
The little,
It's the
layoff,
Sheringham
wasn't
layoff.
it? The
Oh,
layoff
it's
was
the Sheringham layoff where he knows he's there, and it's kind of like a non-look pass, is what
it
you'd
just
call it nowadays.
kind of opens his body up. It just kind of glances it to him, doesn't he? And Shearer doesn't even look twice.
He made a career out of it, Sheringham.
Yeah.
He's another one. He don't get spoke about enough, Sheringham.
No, and the thing is, in that game, he scores two himself.
Yeah,
You know, and he lays on the goal for Shearer. So that combination is as lethal as it gets in the entire tournament, probably in the world at that stage.
Yeah.
Shearer and Sheringham are outstanding, and that obviously sealed England through to the knockouts. And in the Euros back then, you went straight into the quarterfinals because there was fewer teams, and it was a bit of a
Spanish side.
Yeah, it's a bit of a dead rubber though, the game, as far as I recall.
Yeah, it wasn't
uneventful
great.
really, and we get the penalties, which you're probably shitting yourself again. England and penalties. I know this is probably the start of it, maybe, but and 90. But obviously, Pearce, it's such an emotional
what a moment.
penalty, isn't it?
What a moment.
After 6 years ago.
6 years, and everybody, it's like everybody took that penalty kick with him. Every single person in country, because everybody loved Pearce because he's like your Keno of Ireland. He wore his heart on his sleeve. He was so passionate, hard tackling, fierce, ferocious player. And he could play as well, though. And a lot of people give him that credit because he's
very, very good player. Yeah.
Very, very, very good player with a great left foot.
Yeah.
And the way he even strikes the penalty.
Yeah, it's
again, the tournament was full of many moments. Gascoigne's goal, the Holland 4-1 game, but Pearce's reaction when he scores that goal.
Oh, it's relief.
The whole country did the exact same thing as what he did.
Definitely, and obviously England 4-2 on penalties here.
Seaman on a worldie in penalty shootout.
Brilliant, saved two, didn't he? Saved two penalties, and you don't get a bigger semi-final than this.
And the start we made.
Yeah, England, Germany. Euro 96, Wembley. It's just, there's so much to it. Like, we always talk about the war. the war this, the war that. But
Yeah, it gets
in
brought into it though.
it does, and it obviously should as well. It's important, but it just in strictly in football terms as well. You're talking, you know, it doesn't get bigger in Europe. I personally don't think than England and Germany. I know France have won several World Cups, but
Yeah,
there's something about England and Germany. I think probably take away Brazil and Argentina. I think it's probably the biggest rivalry in international football.
I agree,
England and
100%.
Germany.
100%, I agree. Yeah, and it's the one what gets spoken about the most, and obviously we've just seen it in the tournament.
Just gone, yeah.
We'll get into that later on. Obviously, a lot of demons got put to bed in that game, but I mean that game specifically kind of went sort of when we got to the semi-finals. Then I remember Venables. I think he was saying in one of the interviews, like, I don't know whether he said it word for word, but he were confident and he knew how good we were. But I'd have still put it were ours to lose that in that sort of situation as squad goes. And the way we started the game, I think it was 5 minutes in when Shearer scored off corner.
3 minutes, yeah.
3 minutes in, I knew it were early. And I mean, it was just, it's England. That's the only answer I can give you. And there were loads of stuff what were coming out at the time where how we ended up playing in our away kit and they were in their own kit, even though we were playing at Wembley and all that sort of stuff.
Handbags,
all the minor stuff got brought up. But as it goes again, 90 minutes, 11v11, the players that we had out compared to the players that they had out. And I mean, you've got Klinsmann there, Andy Moller, Sammer, Ziga. They had a quality team, but at that moment,
I'm actually looking through Stefan Freund and all, like Mehmet Scholl, like they had a really good team. But I have to be honest with you, like I'm looking at the England team and
scary.
They have a better team, know. And I just think again though, you look at England, right? They won 3 games, 2 games, in normal time. 0-0 against Spain, 1-1 against Germany. So they just couldn't put teams away, as much firepower as they had. And obviously we know Southgate, he misses the penalty, and Germany score, and it's 6-5, and England are out. And it's one of the most famous scenes, Southgate head and hands walking back that he's missed, and all of a sudden it's like 90 again. They're out again,
and the media claws are out again, and it's like I say it to this day, and obviously he missed the penalty. Listen, the guy stood up to take one. What about what the media don't talk? You're always going to be that person anyway. Oh, he's the one who missed, and again,
exactly.
We'll go into that tournament more recently.
Someone has to miss.
Someone's got to do it. What about the other 4 or 5 people who didn't put their hand up?
Yeah.
Or like who didn't get chosen?
I'm looking here. Shearer, Platt, Pearce, Gascoigne, and Sheringham took them.
So
and
he's still on pitch. You've got Anderton, maybe.
Anderton, Ince.
Right.
Ince was there. He could have took one. But beyond that, McManaman could have took one. So there's the 3 kind of midfielders there didn't take one. Which is unusual. But as you say, one of them could have missed. It's not really specifically that it was Southgate. And even Venables, they asked him. They in that documentary I watched, they said, was Southgate number 6? Was he the one? And he was like, yeah, like he always was. I had me 5 that I knew was going to take it. Shearer, Platt, Pearce, Gascoigne, and Sheringham. And he was just next. And he was just unlucky. He felt so sorry for him. And I think you have to feel sorry for anyone like that.
Listen, it's got to be someone, though, as well, in the same breath. There's always going to be that one, whether you win or lose. Somebody's going to be the one who's, unfortunately, is going to be in that moment. And it was Gareth at that moment. So
and then you look at, history repeats itself last summer. Southgate being the manager. Football has a weird way of doing these things.
It does. And obviously we had the Germany game in between just to make it even more like it were.
It's weird. Football is weird like that. But, what we'll do is, we'll park 96. Obviously we know it was a fantastic tournament for England.
Yeah.
They should have won it. Let's call it as it is. They probably they would have went on to win it. But at the same time, they just didn't really back it up, did they? In the couple of tournaments after that, and we won't spend too much time on these because they weren't really a success for a couple of reasons. But France 98, Venables is gone.
Hoddle's come in,
Hoddle has come in, who, funnily enough, Gary Neville reckons he was the best England manager he had.
It's been said, and again, pitter patter with the the older people, the older generation, like especially my dad, and he was keen on Hoddle, the brand of football, what he was trying to play, and obviously he'd been known at his coaching methods and the way he was picking. But we got off to a bad start again, just in the fact that you had all the noise about it when he didn't pick Gascoigne and because of this comment and all that, and you've got a monkey on your shoulder before tournaments even started because they're going on about petty stuff like that, and the team, they're not even going on about the squad of players that's been picked, and it's just it was a farce, not a farce so much. They scathed through again. Beckham pulled us out of it against Colombia with a free kick, and then we put an half decent performance on against Argentina, but it was more overshadowed by Owen's bit of brilliance.
Exactly.
And obviously everyone were talking about him, but as a whole, with the squad of players that we had, but
like just
that latter generation of '96 were kind of not coming to an end, because that might be a bit disrespectful, but
like if we talk about the first, if even touching on your point, right, the first game of the tournament for England, this is the starting 11. So they played a back five under Hoddle. David Seaman, Sol Campbell, Gareth Southgate, Tony Adams, Anderton and Lasso were wing backs. Ince, Batty and Scholes in midfield, and Sheringham and Shearer up front, and then Michael Owen came on. So I mean, that in itself, then that sounds even better than '96 to me, in a sense. I know you're missing Gascoigne, but Paul Scholes there. You know, you're bringing in players that are as good. You know?
You've got a bit more steel in midfield, obviously with Batty as well in the ratting and winning ball. It with the Anderton pick now,
right wing back.
Yeah, again, to be fair, he goes highly underrated sometimes, Anderton. And if you listen to Sheringham, which I'm sure you do, because you're a United fan, Sheringham has him. He has him up there, Anderton, as one of the best he's played with.
Yeah, he scores as well, though, isn't it?
But
like he scored against Colombia. Anderton.
He had it. Listen, his delivery and his free kick taking were, well, obviously, it's not Beckham, but the guy could hit a free kick, and his set pieces were very good. And if you look at his assist record, like I say, at Spurs and what have you, he could get an assist, but it was I didn't get the wing back. Neville were kind of coming into the team, and he played a bit in '96. Neville, and it was just.
It's when you look back on it, and you'd say 1998. You know, Man United win the treble the following year. Gary Neville plays 30, 40 games.
Yeah,
it's a weird one.
You've got a majority of United team should have been in that team. Obviously, they had a strong uphold in the team, like that. But I mean,
like at that stage, Sheringham was at United and everything.
Yeah, you know, you've got Beckham,
Scholes.
Obviously Scholes it, but the Neville one were confusing for me because he'd already had that experience playing at Euro '96. United had developed that bit much further, like you said, they've done the treble, so he's an even better player then. The connection that he has with Beckham already, and Scholes and the likes of that, it really strange one.
And he's come through with them.
Yeah,
you know, they've been that whole class of '92 thing. I know it's a marketing thing now, but it is a really, it really was important. And
obviously, Hoddle were there at that moment in time, and he'll have his reasons for picking whatever. It's just sometimes, to me, little things, especially what fans and people who love football notice, even minor little things like that can affect the way that a tournament goes, let alone a game.
Kind of lets doubt sink in, doesn't it? Or let's kind of disgruntled, you know.
Yeah.
Like even David Beckham, I know we're talking, this is 98, 99 obviously is the year we do the treble and all that, but in 99 Beckham is like, what was he, third in the Ballon d'Or that year? Or like in 2000 he was third. He was in and around that conversation. Within kind of 18 months after Euro World Cup.
He wrote there. He wrote there with Ronaldo as like one of the most popular players in world football. You know, the guy was a walking like board,
marketing machine.
Marketing machine. Do you know what I mean? Everywhere you looked, Beckham were there.
Yeah, and look, touching on Beckham, obviously we can't avoid the obvious, the game against Argentina. Two penalties in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, it was a crazy game. Crazy game of football, again against a good Argentina team.
Yeah, I was actually just looking at the Argentina team here. Standing Zanetti, Crespo and Varane. You know,
Ayala, is he playing?
Outstanding. And obviously Shearer and Michael Owen, that goal.
Oh,
One of the most famous England goals again, like we just said.
yeah, it announced him. He announced himself to world football, then didn't he? He put himself on the stage.
Yeah.
But again, another frustrating tournament because we got down to the nitty gritty again, and I think this time it was Batty, wasn't it? Who was the unfortunate player. I think Batty missed, and
Yeah, I think it was. I literally had it up there a second ago,
yeah,
but yeah, and penalties again. And I know this is the like Crespo actually missed the penalty, Ince missed one, and then yeah, Batty missed the fifth one. So
yeah,
and England are out, and they played that whole second half with 10 men,
they did. Yeah, Campbell
and
went. Yeah,
they
oh Beckham went.
conceded,
Sorry, yeah, but the
and they
sending
kept it.
off was silly.
Yeah, look, I mean, looking back on it now,
Simeone.
you would say for the era that was in '98, it was a soft red card.
Yeah, oh,
If
of
that
course
was if it was now, you'd
yeah.
say it's a red card
Oh
because
yeah,
they're all soft now. But back then, Jesus, if Roy Keane done that probably week
yeah.
in week out in '98, they'd never been sent off for stupid shit like that.
Oh,
So
Vinnie Jones was kicking people in fucking teeth. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And,
it was really really soft red card,
and Simeone to have the reaction that
it's
he had.
hilarious.
Oh,
Captain of Argentina, dirtiest animal
this
you
is
could
what I mean.
find, and he'd rolling around the fucking place. So
And let's have it right. I think majority him and Ince were kicking fuck out of each other in the middle, like
yeah,
constantly all game. And he must
it's
have just looked at Beckham and thought he's getting frustrated. Prime
it's
target.
soft target
Yeah,
exactly. But obviously that's '98. Look, let's be honest about it. I think France probably were always going to win that. With the team they
yeah.
had and everything else.
Obviously,
So
Ronaldo getting ill. We spoke about it in previous
definitely,
podcasts.
definitely, yeah. I mean, I have a different opinion on the entire thing, obviously with Ronaldo, but I think France probably still would have done it. They were outstanding. 2000, we'll just flick through,
Yeah,
Keegan. It was very much just an in between phase, I think, wasn't it? They just didn't really know what to do with the England team. But yeah, 2000. Your thoughts on that?
oh, it were awful. I think the only bit about that tournament I remember were Romania. All of them die in the row, blonde.
Yeah,
I think that's about what I could get. We beat Germany 1-0. Shearer with a diving header, but that were about the
that's
miss
about
of
it,
that
isn't it?
tournament.
Really?
It was so poor. I
Yeah,
remember. I think Phil Neville gave a penalty away. What was just in the against Romania and the dying embers, and you just that was
yeah.
the epitome of the tournament. Is the fact that, well, Phil Neville were playing for a start, and
Yeah.
it just Keegan never had any. He never had an impetus or a drive over the squad. I think everyone thought
He's a
he's
yes man, I think, wasn't he,
yeah.
Keegan as
He
well?
just thought his reputation were going to carry him over because he obviously was such a great player when he played. And
Ballon d'Ors and all this sort of
yeah,
stuff.
and
So
it just didn't work. What's the egos in changing room just took over everything what he tried
definitely.
to amass.
And I think as well, it's a fair point that that team of '96 was most definitely finished at that point.
That were it. It were
Sheringham
kind
and
of
stuff.
yeah. Shearer
Sheringham
were
was
coming to
finished.
yeah.
Actually, I tell it, I think Sheringham won PFA Player of the Year in
Possibly
2000
yeah.
or 2001, but it was more so an honorary thing. He was 35 or 36 at that stage. But
Shearer most definitely. I think it was definitely his last international tournament. He passed the baton on to Delight. Obviously, Owen were coming
Michael
through.
Owen and that, yeah.
Yeah, and then,
Look, I'm actually looking at the group stage here. England and Germany were both eliminated in the
yeah,
group
it was
stage, and
crazy.
Portugal and Romania went through. It's a
Yeah.
tough team because that Portuguese team around them were outstanding.
Oh, Rui Costa,
And
Figo in his
Nuno
pomp.
Gomez,
Nuno Gomez, yeah.
they had a really, really good team. But obviously, yeah, 2000 is a disaster. I'm moving on now to 2002. It's significant because I can talk about Ireland.
Yeah,
In 2002, we
yes.
qualified, and it would have been my first memory of a tournament of really watching it. I remember Euro 2000. It was Trezeguet, wasn't it, in the
Yeah,
golden goal or
golden
whatever it
goal,
was.
yeah, yeah.
So I kind of remember all of that. It was unique golden goal as well. It was mental. But 2002, that was the beginning of a new era for England.
Yeah,
The
the golden generation,
Yeah,
as the dubbed.
we obviously still had players to really break it, like Gerrard, Lampard, and Rooney. But
Yeah,
you had Beckham was absolutely in his peak
yeah.
at
It was
this time,
it
and
was the defence as well, wasn't it? More than anything.
yeah, it really was.
Yeah,
But looking, I mean, it's also the dawn of a new era because it's the first foreign manager
yeah.
to manage England.
Sven.
Sven Goran Erikkson comes in, and can you recall at the time what it was like when he came in? What was the feel? I, as I say, it would have been my first real experience of watching an
Yeah,
international tournament. But where did do you know where he came from?
he just had his great time at Lazio, I think, just beforehand, and
Yeah,
he could have been around at Parma or somewhere like that. But I'm sure it was the Lazio era because
yeah,
he were in charge as Saber Veron went to United,
United, yeah,
which is around a similar time. So I'm sure he were at
yeah,
Lazio, and
2001, I think. Yeah, you're right.
it was strange. Obviously, we know the resume that he had in the CV and the trophies that he'd won in Italy and this and that. But as an England fan, it were new for a start because
Yeah,
we were looking around the country thinking who's going to come in, and I know the British manager. I know Martin O'Neill. He had his name thrown in that a lot of the times.
he had done
Uh,
a great job at Leicester, didn't he? Around
yeah,
that time,
and obviously you've got your Redknaps and what have you, but they pull this.
Fergie.
Yeah,
He was retiring around then, wasn't he?
I don't think it. Oh, yeah, for the 60th time, but I don't think it'd ever been forgiven anyway. But I mean, so they pull this rabbit out of the hat all of a sudden.
Mm,
This Swede turns up with a decent reputation, and we're
yeah,
kind of wondering what sort of European football is he going to bring. But let's be honest, they needed to do something different anyway, judging what had happened in 2000
yeah,
and the way
definitely.
the football were going. So a lot of the English fans, well, I say a lot, I shouldn't speak for most because everybody has a different view, but I mean, kind of at the point where let's just see what happens. Let's see. He's got a pool of players to pick from what anybody could be jealous of in
Yeah,
a way, which most England
and
managers are
just
blessed
to
with.
just to expand on that point, this is the first game. David Seaman, Danny Mills, Rio Ferdinand, Saul Campbell, Ashley Cole,
Yeah.
Beckham, Hargreaves, Scholes, Heskey, Vassell, and Owen. Like you can see in 4 years' time in the 2006 World Cup, there's
Are
a
we
few of
going to
them
come on
gone,
even
and they're
more?
even better. You
Yeah.
know, but that is a really the defense and midfield like Beckham, Hargreaves, Scholes. Like even Owen Hargreaves around them
Yeah.
was a top player
And
for
again,
Bayern Munich.
I think Neville were injured again at that time, hence Danny Mills's inclusion.
Yeah,
But it was just the midfield would normally always bang on. But obviously, you've said Hargreaves there, you've got
yeah,
Scholes, Beckham, and what have you. And you've still got your players like Nicky Butt, Gerard
exactly.
Young, and stuff. They all can come in. Kieran Dyer were flirting in between squad and stuff like that. But we always had a problem with left midfield,
Yeah,
always.
square
And
peg and round hole. Like he
I
actually
mean,
says here, Heskey played on the left in the first
Sinclair,
game.
Trevor
The
Sinclair ended up
second
out there.
game, then Scholes was there,
Scholesy on left wing. It's
and then the
sacrilege, isn't it?
third game it was Trevor Sinclair. Like
Trevor Sinclair.
it's ridiculous, really. It's very very
Yeah,
poor.
and I mean, it's like, and these players that get dug out in games,
Yeah,
and Scholes getting dug out. Oh, what were you doing in that? I'm like, yeah,
it's Paul
Paul Scholes
Scholes.
up left wing, yeah.
Yeah,
Out.
exactly. But like they win one game in the group stage and they just scrape through ahead of Argentina.
Yeah,
Um, two draw and the group is not great. Nigeria and Sweden and Argentina.
yeah.
Fair enough,
Well,
Argentina are quite good.
it was the
They've
retribution game when it Beckham scored the penalty again,
exactly, yeah,
got all his demons off chest, and Nigeria had a half decent. They give Argentina a good game before we played them.
yeah. Like they have a great team. Like JJ is playing with them, and
That's
he's
all they need.
and Kano in fairness,
Yeah,
Kano. But I'm actually looking here. They actually had an
Sunday
actually good team.
Elise,
Joseph
Ikpeba,
Yobo,
yeah.
John Utaka. They actually had a good team.
They had a solid team. Well,
Yeah.
they were obviously Nigeria are normally the mainstay of the World Cups, aren't they? Regarding
That
African teams, you know what I
one
mean?
them
They've
in
always been them in
Egypt and
Cameroon
stuff are
and
good. Yeah,
Egypt have slowly come in.
of
Obviously,
late. Yeah,
of late as we seen last night, but
but yeah, I mean, it's a pretty poor group
group
stage for
performance.
England. But once you get through, I mean, no one gives a shit really. You're through, you know that,
Yeah,
right?
it's tournament. This is sometimes like you want to perform well in the groups because obviously that's kind of going to dictate how you're going to play in the rest of the tour. If somebody's banging teams in group, they're going to take form into the group stages. But let's have it right. Listen, it's tournament football.
Yeah,
So
it's 90 minutes, isn't it?
once you get through them group stages, whether you scrape through or not, you get through. You go into a 90-minute game where, of
And I think England showed that then, didn't they?
course,
They
they did.
took on Denmark, and
Yeah,
again, a really good Danish team. Like
yeah.
just to quickly go through it,
But they
because
woke
there's
up in
like
that
you're
game.
talking Sorensen, Martin Laursen, Nicholas
Yeah,
Jensen,
Jan
Gravesen,
Thomason.
Ramadal,
Yeah,
Jesper Gronkier,
Stig
like
Toft in. They had a good squad.
Klaus
Romadal.
Jensen. They had
Yeah.
a really decent team around them, that Danish team. But England
We
destroyed them in
clicked.
the first half, didn't they?
We clicked in that game. Yeah, for all of a sudden, and I remember where I'm living now. Like I watched it down the road in pub. It's now
Yeah,
a restaurant, but Royal Oak it used to be called, and that's a memory of mine of that World Cup. Is I watched it down the road, and the first half, obviously the pub's buzzing and they're going mental,
yeah.
and I've actually got my dad saying, "Wow, where's this come from?" But if they
Oh,
can perform,
nowhere, yeah.
yeah, if they can perform like this, then there'll be a match for anybody.
Yeah, and like blew them away in the first half. Ferdinand,
Absolutely,
Owen, and
hammered them.
Heskey. Um,
Esky looked like he were going to be an handful for anybody in tournament.
yeah, and he was look, as you say, it was probably they probably left it too late to light a fire in themselves,
Yeah, it's
you
just,
know.
and
But
then
they
obviously
also look, they came up against the champions, an outstanding Brazilian team. But at the same
it's a
time,
game we could have won again.
they go down to 10 men with 40 minutes to go. Brazil, that way. So
And
it's one of those
we
things.
were 1-0 up.
Yeah, well, Owen scores and another great goal by
Yeah,
Owen.
good
But
finish. Yeah,
we know what happens then. Rivaldo and Ronaldinho's goal obviously is another crazy moment. He
yeah,
chips Seaman from whatever about 40 yards out, and it is a shot.
yeah.
It's
There's no
most
doubt about that.
definitely a
Yeah,
shot. He even says it to the. Did he say it to someone on the bench? I think when we done the
yeah.
Ronaldinho when we
I'm going to
mentioned
do
it,
it. Yeah,
that he says I'm going to chip him. So and he does it, but again, they're down 40 minutes against a 10-man side, and England with that team. And I'm looking, Trevor Sinclair came off around the time Ronaldinho was sent off. They brought on Kieran Dyer.
yeah,
It just the squad was pretty thin beyond maybe 12 or 13 players.
yeah.
They were bringing on players that were probably young. Like I'm looking, they brought on a 36-year-old Sheringham, Darius Vassell, who was young at the time, and Kieran Dyer, who was young. Whereas Brazil, Ronaldo, Rivaldo, Gilberto Silva, Roberto Carlos, Cafu,
Cafu, yeah.
it really
It's a
was
joke,
men
innit? Yeah,
against boys, that last half an hour, and they just couldn't find the breakthrough. But I think even though it ended on a bad note, I think English fans at that time, and particularly because United were heavily involved in the English team in that era, there was definitely a sense that Euro 2004, World Cup 2006,
yeah,
and Euro 2008 were going to be
yeah,
outstanding because Gerrard at that stage was regular in the Premier League. Around 2001, they won the 5 trophies or whatever.
yeah.
You had
He just started getting into the team properly and
exactly,
playing
and
consistently.
obviously the season after then, 2002 or
Yeah,
three, we had
You've got
Rooney.
Lampard's moved to Chelsea.
Yeah,
He
and
starts flourishing. Rooney obviously comes
breaks
on the
through.
stage,
So
and
you
then
can
John
see that,
Terry starts
yeah,
coming into the team.
that quartet kind of comes through when you're saying, right, this is the new spine of the England team
Yeah,
for the next 10 years. And, Euro 2004, again, it's another Beckham, story of red cards. And
yeah. It's just
it's what, like, let's take a step back. Let's take a step back for a second before we get into Euro 2004. You've just gone over a 6-year period there where you've reached a semi-final, you're out in the groups, you're out in around the 16 or a quarterfinals. You haven't got to a semi-final in 6 years. You're going into Euro 2004 where you have potentially the best English team that there has ever been.
for a while. Yeah,
You
definitely.
know, even the '96 team, if you put that 2004 team up against them and give them a run for their money,
Yeah,
with how good they were, and the players they had in the moment, the likes of the Rooneys and stuff, and we know there was problems like the injuries and stuff like that with Rooney and that. So, but as an England fan around then, surely you're saying to yourself, this is the best chance we've had in probably 10,
yeah,
20 years.
yeah. You start looking at that squad, and obviously you've rhymed them off there. And I mean, Rooney goes on for have an unreal tournament as well. Let's not get it wrong. And there's a game against France where he absolutely, I think it's Zidane or Henry says it. He demolishes world class players on his own. And what I think Rooney he's around 19, 20 year old
Yeah,
at that
he's
point,
just 20, or just 19
just
actually, I think.
19, and he were absolutely he just stole the show when we played him in the group spot. I mean, as regarding the squad, I always, me personally, I look at what we've got, and
He
then
was
obviously
just to
I
cut
look.
across you. He was actually 18, and he went 19 then after the tournament.
Yeah,
So
and
like
I
18
think
years old.
he bagged two against Croatia. I think it were.
He got, let me check, 2 against Croatia. He got
Yeah,
2 against Switzerland.
yeah. He were on fire. He looked like everything he were hitting were just going in. But his
Yeah,
actual individual performance against France, it were unreal
yeah.
at
In
that
in a
age.
game that
In a game,
they robbed at the end.
yeah, they
Zidane
did.
obviously
They
just
did.
robbed it.
They did silly mistakes and what have you. But again, like you said, as we revert back to the squad, what I do personally, I look at what we've got, and then you go to the likes of your Frances, your Italys, your Germanys.
Let me just call out these 2 11s that played in the France and England game in this period, right? The French team: Barthez, William Gallas, Thuram, Sylvester, Lizarazu, Perez, Vieira, Makelele, Zidane, Trezeguet, and Henry. And the England team: David James, Gary Neville, Ledley King, Campbell, Cole, Beckham, Lampard, Gerrard, Scholes, Rooney, and Owen. That's probably the greatest 22 players in the last 20 years. The give or take a
How's Ledley
handful.
King snuck in there?
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? David James as well. Jesus
Yeah,
Christ. But they held their own against them up until the 92nd minute.
they did. They played it again. It just ended disappointment, but at the same time, for me, the performance was unlucky to warrant what happened. But again, as we were just saying, it's knockout football.
Yeah,
So it's that fine line is literally what can win you a game and lose you a game.
yeah,
And
exactly. And as you say, then you go on. Rooney destroys Switzerland. Rooney destroys Croatia. You know they and Lampard and Scholes as well. Like they begin. There's one thing I've noticed in this tournament, and this is probably the first time I've looked through it, and we've looked through it for since it happened. Maybe we are looking at the games in detail. They're free scored in England
they very were attacking
at
wise.
this period because you're looking in '96, 3 draws, penalties. '98, 2000 was the same. 2002, they won 1 game. In this kind of 2004, they were free scoring, weren't they? I think your audio was gone there for a sec.
We're back, yeah,
There you're grand now, yeah. But they
yeah,
were free scoring, they really were.
yeah. They were winning with conviction, and obviously the attacking talent. You just read it out there. You're Owen and Rooney, Gerrard, Beckham, Lampard, Scholes. It's again, like we said, look across Europe. There, you put that midfield against any other team in Europe along that time, and you're thinking there's only one winner there.
And funnily enough, the only one that you really could put it up against was the
It's
French one.
France, yeah,
And it was obviously Zidane just 2 goals and very, very late. But it's the same old story though, isn't it, mate? You get through the group. You do
yeah.
meet a tough team, as we said. That Portuguese team then was outstanding.
Again,
Really, really outstanding team. But they can't get over the line, can they?
no, and then even me then as we get into this point, this is like my third, fourth tournament, and I'm thinking every time we get to last 16 quarters, any sort of big game with any pressure or precedence on it, I'm like, we haven't got the bottle. Bottle gets thrown into it a lot. That definitely gets thrown into it a lot.
Yeah,
And you just start thinking, even you're going into the game already thinking, they're going to let us down.
yeah.
They're going to let us down. Or you look at a couple of players on their team and think, how are they going to cope with Figo? How are they going to cope with Rui Costa?
Ronaldo.
And then,
That stage as well.
and he started, and obviously the wink, the fame, giving it all that.
Yeah.
But it's like, and then you start getting to that point going, I hope we don't go to penalties.
But yeah, and obviously we know Beckham misses the first one.
He does,
And in fairness, it's Rui Costa misses, but it falls again to another young player. Well, maybe he wasn't too young around 2004. He was probably regular for Aston Villa. Darius Vassell misses the crucial penalty. But, it's just unlucky. I don't think that there was I don't think it was any deeper than on the surface that England missed penalties. I think it's just coincidence that they just happened to go out consecutively on penalties. I don't think there was a course or anything like that.
No, it's just fine margins in a game.
Yeah,
But to the outside, and obviously the way the media portray it is bottle jobs.
yeah,
Constantly get beat in big games. Whenever we come against somebody better or bigger than us, we always fail and what have you, and all that comes into it. And if you actually sit down and watch the games, it's actually far from it.
yeah.
it is far from it. It's like going back to the group game with France now. It's just coming back in my mind there, and I think Lampard scores an header
He does, yeah,
to get
scores.
us on. And it's just Gerrard goes to play the pass back, and he puts Henry in, and he gets brought down by David. And obviously, you've got a bit of brilliance from Zidane with free kick as well. But I mean, it is literally no teams are out playing us or playing
Yeah,
us
as
off
you say,
mark or
there
whatever.
was
It's just
mistakes.
fine margins and mistakes, little stuff like that. But
Yeah,
when you're getting knocked out in last 16s or quarterfinals, you're coming home to abuse because
slaughter.
the media are like, oh, England should be winning this outright, and fair
And
enough.
they probably should have. Let's
Yeah,
call it as it is, mate. They
you
really
do have
should have.
that opinion. Yeah, you see the squad, but it's like it's a game of football. You've just rallied off the French team there, and if you look at the Dutch team around that time, Van der Vaart, Schneider, Robben, Van Nistelrooy,
Yeah,
these have still got teams that are more than capable of destroying top teams on the day.
world class,
Yeah.
world class. You
So
know.
sometimes I think it gets overhanded, and they do get they get more stick than what they should. But to be fair, they put themselves in that situation by the way they big the players up in the season prior to the tournament.
Yeah,
So Rooney's coming through. United have just purchased him for 25, 30 million, and
mm,
he's the linchpin of English football. Beckham's the poster boy. Lampard's bagging goals for fun out of midfield. That's all it is in media leading up to it. And are
yeah,
these teams going to be able to cope with us? And then as soon as they get to a tournament, they turn on them.
yeah. And nothing's changed in
No,
50 years.
nothing.
Since '66.
They cause the majority of the problems.
Absolutely. Let's move on to 2006, and
Yeah,
we'll glint through the Capello and Hodgson era because it's pretty poor. But the 2006 is the last of the what you would probably consider the greatest England team. In my
yeah,
opinion, it's the greatest England team that I've seen on paper.
yeah,
That and 2004, but there's slight differences. Like I'm gonna call out this starting 11. So just briefly, as you know, England, they didn't lose a game in the group stage. They won two and drew one. The group wasn't great. In fairness, Trinidad and Tobago, Paraguay, and Sweden.
yeah,
So they breezed through them. It was an OG in the first game, but this starting 11. Paul Robinson, fair enough. At that time, he was
yeah,
actually quite a good keeper. But England, that was the only position that England never had a solid keeper up until maybe Joe Hart came in for a few years. He was quite good. But
yeah.
you've Paul Robinson, Neville Ferdinand, Terry Cole, Beckham, Gerrard, Lampard, Joe Cole, Wayne Rooney, and Michael Owen.
I mean, come on.
If you were to name 11 of the best
That is the
English
best 11.
players, that is the best 11 you could name without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah.
Each one of them playing at their absolute peak. Maybe besides Gary Neville, who was getting on. He was the elder statesman probably at that stage.
But you need the mix of experience.
Absolutely, but he was still a top class player. Like that year, Mourinho, Chelsea had just won it for the second time. United then won the league 3 years in a row with
Yeah.
Neville playing at right back. So that Neville, Ferdinand, Terry, and Cole, that's potentially the best four England defenders that there's been in the last 30 years.
That that's
Adams, maybe.
that were the one for me, mate. That were I was obviously I was 16-year-old then, and but I'm going into this tournament, and you see in the squad, and
You're going to win it.
yeah, my dad's not as optimistic because he's like
He's seen it for years and years. Yeah.
he's at that point then going, yeah, seeing it, done it, but I'm buzzing thinking, look at this team.
Yeah.
Nobody should be able. Oh, you'll get a good game at French or Germans or what have you, and Italy will be half beat the
But you're
standard
so good.
stereotypical.
And you know what I'm looking as well, like just your bench, like Jamie Carragher, Stuart Downing, Aaron Lennon, Peter Crouch, Joe Cole. Like you've really, really good players on the bench, and this is Owen Hargreaves. Yeah, you have players here where we said, the squad is a bit thin beyond maybe the first 12 or 13 players. Not now, it isn't.
No, they can step in and do a job.
Yeah, you have strength and depth at this stage.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
obviously we'll talk about Capello, and I mean, Capello comes in, and the reputation he had, and this
yeah.
is first time where I knew about him anyway. So
But
obviously,
this is still Ericsson at this stage.
is it still Sven
Yeah,
coming
this
to
is his
Capello?
last one. Yeah,
But
yeah. It
as,
says it's still him anyway.
as we get on to obviously as we move on to Capello,
Yeah.
just even England are throwing the bucket at it now. They're just going the best manager in world or whoever they're going, yeah, we'll give you 8 million a year. Come in. you don't even need to worry about the team kind of thing. Like the squad will pick itself.
Yeah,
Just basically pick a tactic. You've done it all over Europe. You've won trophies everywhere, and they think that it's an instant hit and it's going to work,
yeah,
even with the best squad. But again, I'll go on. I'll revert back to the left hand side of midfield. Now, for whatever reason at that time, especially in 2006, now Wayne Bridge were at Chelsea, and Bridge he were one of the best fullbacks in England.
yeah,
Aside with Cole, and they were both very good going forward.
yeah.
And we always had this thing about there's no left midfielder, out and out left midfielder. Joe
Yeah,
Cole got through out there a few times, and I remember me and my dad used to say, "Oh,
it was out there. Yeah,
why didn't they go for Cole and Bridge?
yeah,
Play one of them left back, one of them left wing. You've got the natural ability of a left-sided player. They both can attack, but they both can defend as well.
But even at that time, we all said about Ashley Cole, oh, now it's normal. But then he was the first
Marauding
that I
full
can remember
proper.
flying fullback.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, that got into the box and scored goals. You
yeah,
know, and you're right. I mean, if Eric, look, let's call it as it is. At that stage, Ericsson was on the way out. He had already said he was leaving after the World Cup, so
yeah,
he was not going to try out new. He was going to just say, put the best 11 on the pitch and just see what they can do. And
yeah.
look, I mean, that England team are outstanding, but there's problems, isn't there? Like you're looking at Rooney around that time and stuff. Even I think in his documentary I watched, he's heavy drinking,
Yeah, you
he's
could tell.
angry,
Yeah,
he's frustrated, and obviously then the injury that he gets, and I'll never forget Ricardo
the
Carvalho
Chelsea game. Yeah,
last
yeah.
game of the season, and they had won the league already. I think that was the game they beat us in Old
Three
Trafford,
0
and
Yeah, Joe Cole were on
Joe Cole
fire
got
that day.
two, I
Yeah,
think he did, and that was it. I think the league was over, but about 20 minutes to go, he tackles and breaks his metatarsal, was it, or something like that?
yeah.
And this was when the panic set in.
Oh, everybody gasped that day. I was watching it. I just
Yeah,
remember me going, "Oh no, no."
yeah. Like even if we think about it now, the league is over. The FA would be contacting Man United and saying, "Don't fucking play
Yeah,
Wayne
100%.
Rooney." You know what I
Yeah,
mean? If that's Harry Kane or Foden or Declan Rice or something now
yeah. Put
going
that
into,
cunt in a straitjacket and throw him in a
absolutely
funky room.
bubble wrap him
Yeah,
until the World Cup. You know, it's madness. He played, but Rooney was never going to play and not give a
he's
million
all.
percent. You
Yeah,
know that way. So he went in, and obviously he gets injured, and ultimately it doesn't have a massive effect because they get through the group handy enough, and he gets back into the team. But when it comes to a rematch against the Portuguese in the quarter final,
same as.
penalties again,
Yeah, your mate winks at Rooney, sets it all up,
sets
sets
it
the
off.
atmosphere. Yeah, and
Yeah,
it was.
it's a disaster. Again, the greatest English thing that there is. Your audio's gone again. You back in?
Yeah, are
There
you
you are,
there?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. The game was poor itself. I were in London.
really.
Yeah, watching the game, and it just again, Portugal's they've been blessed with players as well and squads with kind of same as. But like you say, when you're looking at our team, you're thinking as soon as the game gets going and Gerrard gets into his stride in midfield and stick it on Ronaldo a bit, pull him out at game. Figo's aging a little bit.
Mm.
Not too sure if I think Rui Costa might have gone by then. I think he
He
might have
was.
just gone.
The Portuguese team was great.
Postiga, I think, we're knocking
They
about
had
at that.
Pauletta started up front, but
Yeah,
you're looking like he wasn't great. But then you've Ronaldo, Figo, Maniche, Petit, Thiago.
Maniche. Yeah,
But then they also have Deco, they have Simao, Helder Postiga. So they did have
yeah,
a Carvalho, Nuno Valente. They had a good team at that
yeah.
stage, Portugal.
But you still have us down as favourites,
Absolutely.
100%. And
You know,
again,
the
the
only thing I
old.
will say is just briefly before you get into it, it's the first time in the tournament that Ericsson buckles though with the team selection. He plays a five in midfield.
Yeah, he does. Which you show him weakness before the
He
game
started.
started.
He actually dropped. Let me just go back here. Sorry, he dropped Michael Owen, I think it
Yeah,
was.
to pack the
He
midfield.
did, and he played Owen Hargreaves,
Yeah, he did.
and it
To
just
be fair,
backfired.
Agree's had a good game.
Yeah, he played at the 120 minutes, and actually scored his penalties. So
Yeah, he
you
did. Yeah,
can't
yeah.
give out too much about him. But
No,
you're
he
right.
played. I liked Tiger Eves. I
Yeah,
rated him. He
he
gave you that bit of a
basically
different balance in midfield as well.
he
Tiger
did.
Eves.
Look, he was, and he signed for United then, whatever, a couple of years later. But it disrupted the England team because there was nothing for Rooney up front. There was no service. You know, Gerrard and Lampard, we obviously know the whole story there. Not being able to play together. A decent manager would have got
Yeah,
two of
what a
them
load of
playing
bollocks
together.
that is. What a load of bollocks.
Yeah, it's just a scandalous argument. But I think the Portuguese on that day, they were clever. You know, they got Rooney obviously sent off. England go down to 10 men. You know, Beckham gets whipped off. Peter Crouch comes on. Aaron Lennon. They just couldn't get to grasps anymore with the in the
No,
game, and they just lost it. Goes to penalties then again. And in
same old,
fairness,
same old.
and you know what? In other tournaments they missed one, but he's fucking missed three of them.
Yeah, but Carragher scored, and they made him retake it,
Yeah,
and then
Lampard,
he
Gerrard,
missed
and
the
Carragher.
retake.
Yeah, well, they knew it was to knock his out, so they said he has to retake it.
Yeah, fuck it, give it him.
But look, it's again, yeah, right. So here we are at 10 years on. England have been knocked out four times, four times on penalties.
Yeah, on penalties, it's crazy.
Two by Portugal as well, and this is talking now. Euro 2008 is really not the last chance, but it was a fantastic chance. Eriksson leaves, and in comes in obviously Steve McLaren, which was just
Done. Wally with my
bizarre,
brother. That's all we need to say.
bizarre. And look, we're going to skip through this bit. You can tell me exactly what happens. Fail to qualify.
It's just obviously the age-old story of him stood at Wembley with a brolly against Croatia in piss down rain, and the managers that were linked with the job at that time, for them to give him the job over, and again, obviously take the bias away with it. Allardyce was strongly linked. Martin O'Neill again was strongly linked with the job. Redknapp were back doing a great job. I think he'd gone back to Spurs again at that time, and to give. And listen, McLaren did okay at Middlesbrough. He got them to UEFA Cup final. I think I remember. I think he were in charge when they beat us in Carling Cup final. He did all right at club level, but his experience and his knowledge at game were nowhere near these sort of things. And then this is where the thing starts coming into the yes man kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
So
and
he were definitely picked on that promise of.
It was, and I'm actually looking here. It says that the FA went for Scolari.
Oh yeah.
And he said no because apparently it was a botched attempt at trying to even get him. So the FA were a mess around then. Anyway.
Yeah, it were. They got to the point where, because they went for Philip Scolari, and obviously they'd interviewed Allardyce and O'Neill, and then I think O'Neill had turned his back on it by then as well.
Do you know what? He was at Villa and he had a great Villa side at that time. Yeah. He had them in the League Cup final and the UEFA Cup semi-final.
Milner and Young and what have you. With
John Carew
were playing all the time,
Yeah, they had a really good team at that stage. And he was being linked with huge jobs at that stage, Martin O'Neill, like top four in England, you know.
Always rated him.
He was. I like Martin O'Neill, but you're right. It goes to McLaren. It's an absolute disaster. I don't blame Paul Robinson for that goal or anything like that. It did one instant. It's obviously summed up that era with McLaren, the year that he was in charge, but they don't qualify, and it's a bigger disappointment than '94 because that team.
Oh, it deserved to be at a tournament.
They were outstanding. Like that summer, you know, Rooney won the Champions League, Rio won it, Hargreaves, Scholes, Carrick, they'd all won the Champions League at United. The double actually, they won the league and Champions League.
Yeah,
that they were all going into that tournament, or they should have been, with being the best team in Europe, England, but they failed. McLaren gets the bullet, and in comes in Capello, who.
That's the one again, yeah.
It's just another really exciting, I would say, at the time, because he's a top class pedigree, but it was a wrong fit, wasn't it?
It just didn't hit it off, and he were old school. Kind of a bit like when Van Gaal went to United.
Yeah, ruthless.
Yeah, archaic. His methods were ruthless. He didn't take no shit. And obviously at the time, all that stuff got thrown about the Wags going over to South Africa with him, and he weren't having a bar of it, and he weren't bothering with any of them. And You
And
just Terry come out and
the
publicly
Terry thing as
outed
well,
him, yeah, and that's just when again that actually were an embarrassment. There's a football tournament going on, and your centre backs outing your manager, and your manager's having arguments with footballers' wives,
yeah,
and the performances on the pitch were fucking awful. The worst.
awful.
It's up there.
Italian managers, man.
It was
I
up
know they're
there.
class, but Jesus Christ, they can take the enjoyment out of football as well
Oh,
sometimes.
and I mean, we weren't letting many in, but we weren't scoring fuck all.
Yeah, like you're talking when you get like they actually won 9 out of 10 qualifying matches, which let's call it as it is. Fucking England do that in their
Yeah,
sleep anyway, because 6 of the teams you get in your team are
yeah.
absolute
San
shit.
Marino, yeah, and
Yeah,
Albania and what have you.
Andorra and countries like this, so they're fucking terrible. But they, Rob Green against the United States again,
Unlucky error again. It's just
and ruins a career. Paul Robinson, 3 years beforehand,
yeah.
ruins his career. Rob Green ruins his career. But we can't let this go without talking about the Lampard goal against that Germany team, because the game is 2-1 at that stage.
And the momentum were with us.
And Lampard scored what can only be described as a fucking screamer of a goal as well, against probably the best keeper in the world at the stage. Well, about to be Manuel Neuer. I could say Edwin van der Sar is probably the best in the world at that stage. But
Yeah.
you're talking that German team were outstanding.
Yeah,
They
Muller.
were favourites to win it that year.
Yeah.
In South Africa, but it gets disallowed, which is crazy. And Germany
They
obviously just run
They
on.
woke up. Yeah, they woke up in that game, and they got at Germany, and once we actually started using the players that we had, instead of being, I think Upson got the first one,
Yeah,
from an header, and then obviously the momentum, the boys are fired up. Lampard sticks that one up, and you can get a fucking buzzing between ball and goal line. But anyway, it didn't get given.
yeah,
Same scenario, but listen, the game could have still ended 4-5-2 to Germany. They could have run away after that, but as momentum goes, and we all know football, you're 2-0 down, you get it back to 2 apiece, you're fired up.
exactly. It can swing the
Their
whole
mindset's
tournament.
different. Their mindset's different. And then, like I say, it's all full of coulda, shoulda, wouldas, you know what I mean? And
Yeah, absolutely. But
it
you're
would just,
right though. It's hard to take. You know what I mean?
but
It's
it were a difficult one to take, especially because it was Germany again, is obviously. But
and the fact it goes on to be 4-1.
yeah,
It's not like instead at 2-1 where you're like, fucking hell, like if that
that
goal would
goal's
have been a
cost.
draw.
Yeah, literally
They
cost
ended up
us.
going on and just
Yeah,
steamrolling
but you're
and
getting
Muller.
to the point again where you don't want to sound like you're making excuses up, and you're looking at the games like we've done. We've literally gone through majority of the tournaments there, and it literally is. It's a penalty shootout or a fine line is what's costing these teams. But
Yeah,
as history goes and as teams go, it just looks like monumental failures.
and that whole period from 2000 to
It was
2010,
stinking.
it was terrible. But
Yeah,
yeah, probably the greatest English players I've ever seen. I'll
yeah,
put it this way: that 10 years have been better than 2010 to 20 in terms of caliber of player.
yeah.
But you've arguably achieved more, funnily enough, in one tournament, 2018, than you did in the entire decade. You know what I mean? With better players, so it's crazy. It really was. But you know, people, it felt like Capello was in charge for years, but he only was in charge for one tournament.
Short term, yeah.
And the John Terry thing, the racism thing, I think happened. The FA stripped him of the captaincy and Capello resigned. That was it. He was finished, said he was retiring and stuff, but I think he was just looking for an out anyway, really.
Yeah, it's
Um,
down rope. It was just a shambles.
it was. I think, though, we can probably say the worst appointment was
Well,
Roy Hodgson.
McLaren, and then, but
Do you know what,
yeah,
though? Let's call it as it is, though. At the time, the McLaren thing, you were like, oh, he is a yes man. But like you said, he had got decent pedigree, like in being an assistant and with Middlesbrough. You know that way. But
yeah.
Hodgson,
The
I know
Hodgson one, it was
he had
kind of like,
Fulham. He did have a decent Fulham team, but
yeah,
let's
but
like,
it was like, what if they run out of money?
yeah, absolutely. He was
But
like to put it in perspective, he was the manager of West Brom at the time.
yeah, it was.
It
Do you
wasn't
know
like
what
they were
that were?
prizing him away from AC Milan or something. You know what I
They,
mean?
they were interviewing again. They were obviously they have a short list and they put together a short list of managers that want to go. But we started getting to a point where people were avoiding the England job as well. They didn't want
Yeah,
anything to do
Isaac
with it
Chalice, wasn't it?
whatsoever. They just thought, and obviously they're looking at the likes of Capello's bowed out at the top.
Mm.
Arguably, Sven disappeared. McLaren
And
disappeared.
yeah, and as well as that though, like the team were disappearing.
Yeah.
It was the end of an era,
So
and
they
it
knew
was
they had
going
a
to
bigger job
be
on.
absolutely, and Hodgson, he takes the job, and the two horrendous three tournaments, 12, 14 and 16,
Yeah.
like ending in what can only be described as probably one of the worst results in England history in my lifetime anyway, that we were together
We
in
was, yeah.
Spain watching it, and Ireland had been knocked out the night before by France in Euro 2016.
But
And
we had more pride and entertainment in watching the Irish Italian game, and then obviously the Irish and French game.
yeah,
And
well, absolutely. And
and
do you know what it is with England in that period, not in general? It always felt like you were 1-0 down before the game started because
yeah,
you were nearly beating yourselves up. The
yeah,
media were beating you up because you're shit or the manager's shit or your team aren't good enough. It was always negative. With Ireland, we were just happy to be there,
yeah.
and we always pulled off great results in tournaments, like beat Italy 1-0. That way, Robbie Brady and stuff.
When you
But
needed to.
exactly, like your dad said, we've got two great results against England in tournaments. That way, we've beaten Italy in Bleed Joint Stadium in '94. So,
Yeah.
like, if fantastic results we've had, but that Iceland game, I can honestly say, was probably the worst I've ever seen England
Oh,
play.
you were sat next to me, and you could see me anyway. And you may like listen. Obviously, we agree on a lot of things, and that day you agree with me. But I mean, I don't shy away or make excuses when we are shit or we're shocking or whatever.
Yeah,
I say it as it is, and you see when tournaments are on, obviously verbal on Facebook, and I make enemies and I make friends, but I just say it as it is, and that night, I, we got the early goal, the penalty,
mm.
and then I thought, oh, this will be a breeze. But at the same time, we're playing against Iceland, and you're watching them go through each tournament. They weren't going to lie down. You knew they weren't,
And they had been good,
and
but
they've been good. But
fucking, it's England.
you're still looking at it, yeah, and you're thinking, nah, they'll still do it. But that for me, as an England fan, probably the most deflated I've ever been,
Yeah,
ever watching them. When we went 2-1 down, I didn't even feel like we were going to get in it. Never,
and
never at one moment.
they went 2-1 up after 20 minutes.
Yeah,
Like
so they had more than
it
enough
was
time.
an hour 70 minutes to get two goals against an
You were
Iceland
sat
team,
next to
which
me, and you remember when it cut to him on bench, and he was just sat there, and he looked like a fucking clueless idiot.
and he just dropped his head.
Yeah,
He knew it was up. Regardless of whether England won that game or not, or got further in the tournament, he was going to go anyway. But
yeah,
to go out in that manner and within an hour of the game finishing, being sacked, just said it all. Do you know that way? Like
yeah,
his letter was already written that he was gone, but and we'll finish it off now with positive because the end of his reign signified the start of a new era for
yeah,
England,
yeah,
and under someone who we mentioned at the very beginning in Gareth Southgate, and missing that penalty, and so many parallels in English football with penalty misses, and you know Pierce missing one and then becoming a hero again. Southgate missing one and now has become a hero again in a
He's
different
mad
way.
in it. This is why football's brilliant as
And
well.
this England team now, you have to be okay. Let me transport you back to '96 or 2006. You have to have that same excitement now with this England team.
Yeah, obviously the last two tournaments have been good. And just before we come on here, I was reading something. Simon Jordan has been mouthing off saying,
Can't stand them.
yeah, well, he's been mouthing off saying Southgate's a bottle job, and the Croatia semi-final, another manager who won that game, and the final against Italy, and yada yada yada. With the squad of players that he's got and the routes through the tournament he's had, any other manager won it, and all that sort of stuff. But what he's done more than anything, tournament results aside, for me, is the squad of players. Obviously, we are blessed again. This is another thing to be obviously another plus of being an England fan is the actual abundance of quality we have
Mm.
in certain areas of pitches.
It's
It's unheard
particularly
of.
attacking areas, isn't it?
Yeah, it's unheard of, and but with the defence, because you're kind of looking at, obviously, can we deal with it the other way? And then obviously, I don't know what you're a footballer, whether you agree. I don't care what he's doing for United at the moment, but when Maguire puts an England top on, there's just something different about him, similar to Pickford in a way. And
can I tell you why he's different? Because he doesn't have Fred and McTominay playing in front of him.
well, there
He
you go.
has Henderson, Phillips, or Rice
Bellingham
playing in
guys,
front of him.
yeah.
So
There's the
just a
strong
lot more
difference.
protection, and the structure is better. But getting into England, you're right.
Yeah,
It's different. You know?
There's a different. A lot of them are commenting at the moment. The players saying how he's bringing like the good feel about the play, and they love being on international duty now, and they love spending time together, and there's a real togetherness in group. Now, I remember a few people a while back, I remember Jimmy Bullard saying on a couple of podcasts, because he tweeted in an England squad under Capello, and he's just said it was shit. He said it was boring.
Yeah. So Michael Carrick said he asked the FA not to select him because playing for England was depressing.
Yeah.
Because there's too many egos, wasn't there, around that era, and it led to so much confrontation. But now you can see it; they all have a common bond almost, or something. I'm not sure.
There is something, and obviously Southgate played in a similar sort of mentality of a team like that in '96. So that's obviously got some sort of portrayal on what he's trying to put together. And I'll go to the Germany game specifically in Euro 2021, 2020, whatever we want to call it.
I think it's officially Euro 2020, so we'll go with that.
That is it officially. And obviously we come up against the Germans, and the media are hyping it up. And he changes his tactics and the team that he picked. And which
we talk, if we can go back briefly, we talk about Eriksson. We talk about the quarter-final against Portugal, and he changes his tactics, and it backfires. Now, granted, there's a red card. History repeats itself all the time with England,
but this time it didn't. And I'll hold my hands up, like I was walking down to the pub beforehand, and I seen the lineup what he'd picked, and I was ringing my dad. I'm like, "What's he doing here? Like he's bowing down to him, kind of thing."
Yeah.
But the way he picked the team, it weren't so much, because it looked like he was just trying to counteract what the Germans were picking.
Yeah, the 4-3-3,
and just trying to mirror image them so they weren't left short at the back. But if you watch the game, and especially the 2 goals what we end up scoring, it was a wicked genius that day, where he knew the pace that we had on the break with the likes of Sterling,
Saka,
because that were a bold move, picking Saka, because he bitten in. But do you know what? That was the first time. Obviously, 2018, great stuff. We got to World Cup quarter final, semis. I watched the quarters with you.
Yeah, I think we touched on that earlier on, though. I do think the caliber of team England played in the World Cup,
that tournament,
very, very poor.
It was
Tunisia
poor.
and Panama, or whoever it was, really Colombia, really bad. But they did get beaten by a good Croatian team, like you say, they went on to get to the final, and they ended up getting to was it a semi-final then in Euro 2020?
No, they beat us in the semis. Oh, in the Euros, in the Euros. They were back there.
I mean, that was a good Croatian team for the era, you know. But you're right about that German game. I don't think in the 20 years that we've basically just quickly covered that England have been that good against the German team.
Yeah, and
dismantled them. And really, gave them a good going over. And that German team, like Neuer, Ginter, Hummels, Rudiger, Kimmich, Goretzka, Kroos, Gosens, Havertz, Müller, and Werner, and then their bench, Gnabry, Chan, Sane, they all came on. You know, we were watching
the tournament, obviously texting each other avidly, weren't we, as they were going on. And Guzens were playing really well at the time, up at the back. But I mean, if you think about the game against us, they had one chance. Muller when he went through, and that was a mistake.
When he missed,
that was a mistake from England. Other than that, it were us.
Yeah,
Calvin Phillips were all over the pitch, absolutely dominating. Grealish came on to effect, but I mean, Sterling and Saka, they were just too much for him.
And obviously Harry, he just does
what he does. He arrives at the right side. Like, again, as we go on, we touch on media. Oh, he only scores penalties, and he got Golden Boot in World Cup.
I was just about to say Simon Jordan. Yeah, he only was top goal scorer in the World Cup.
And then
Very same.
he gets. I've seen a few people again on social media. I try and stay. I'm going to try and stay off social media in big tournaments because you
Winds you up.
oh, you've had a few beers as well, and you're getting back after the game, and you end up getting in a quarrel with some guy who lives on road, and it's just. But it's at the same time, everybody has opinions, and it's all passionate in the day because they're England fans. But some of the
Yeah,
shit what comes out of the mouth's fucking unreal.
yeah.
But he were
Then,
like, they were slagging Kane off. Well, he shouldn't be starting.
it's fucking
He
ridiculous.
shouldn't be.
Carry on.
And I'm like, all right,
He's gonna be England's record goal scorer, and
yeah,
he's gonna be up there with Shearer and Rooney by the time he finishes his career. So
yeah,
it's a fucking non-argument. Before we wrap up, there's a couple of things that I want to get your opinion on because I have a strong opinion on it. The final against Italy, obviously, what a start. You're
yeah.
about to
Getting
win
it
the
better.
Euros. Fucking second minute, Luke Shaw scores a great goal.
Yeah,
And you're winning 2-0, and you basically hold them out until 20 minutes to go. And look, Bonucci's good set piece by Italy. I think, wasn't it a header he scored off corner or something like that?
yeah. Well, look, Pickford made a save and he got an on rebound, didn't he?
Yeah. So it goes to penalties again, and look, obviously England are beaten on penalties, but bringing on Rashford and Sancho with a minute to go to take penalties, for me, I don't get it.
Yeah.
I think it's a stupid move for someone that has been in that situation, that
Yeah,
has missed
it were a bold move.
penalties.
It didn't get received well anyway, did it? But it, it is what it is. He picked them for that purpose. Let's have it right though. Rashford has took many a penalty for United,
Mm-hmm.
and he is normally pretty. He's got a good strike, Rashford, as
He
well, and he
does.
strikes the ball true.
It's the fact he's on the pitch for, I think, was it like 15
Yeah,
seconds,
so he's
and they
cold.
blow up.
Yeah,
He's not warmed up. Neither
yeah,
is Sancho. Sancho's only a kid as well.
yeah,
Saka, I don't worry so much about the Saka penalty. He was
yeah,
having a good tournament. He just missed a penalty, But
yeah,
it's those two specifically, and it's nothing to do with the fact that Man United players couldn't give a shit about United these days, really. But it's more so like, Grealish doesn't take one. Grealish at that time is, top of the world. Declan Rice doesn't take one.
yeah.
Top of the world. Luke Shaw doesn't take one.
Your big
Like,
players
like Luke Shaw, Harry Maguire, fair enough, is a good penalty taker and he
smashes
scores.
one.
But I just felt like, again, it's like 96 with Ince, with McManaman. The players should stand up
Stand up, yeah.
and take them, but these things happen.
It's like I said, in another reality, if Sancho and Rashford score them penalties, they'd hail Southgate as a genius. Oh, he's brought him
Yeah,
on, and look
exactly.
what happens. Again, like I said, we've said it majority of the podcast. Fine margins,
Yeah.
literally fine margins. But my biggest disappointment of that game is when Shaw scores that goal. I think I told you this over Christmas because obviously we have the banter when we go back home, and Val
Mm.
wants to stick his elbow in about us not winning it and what have you. But when we score that goal, the camera pans at Shaw and Shaw runs off, and obviously celebrations are going wild. Then the camera cuts to Donnarumma, Chiellini, Bonucci, and the faces are just like, what's going on? They're literally in shock because they've not let many goals in. They haven't been broken. They definitely didn't get broken up like that in open play.
No.
And then the goal goes in. There would have been a 15, 20-minute period of that game there to just attack that team because they were shell shots. They didn't know what was going on. Then there's the kind of decisions what go against him because of the attacking players that we had. If we got at them for another 15, 20 minutes when that goal went in, when they were still shell shot, we're at Wembley, stadium's absolutely on fire, we're winning in the European final. You get next goal in that game, it's over.
Yeah,
It's over.
exactly. And like we said, it shoulda, coulda, woulda. But
Always.
when you're Southgate, and I'm not saying he's inexperienced because, he's been in and around the England setup and Middlesbrough and stuff like that. But
As regarding games of that calibre, though,
yeah,
isn't he? Yeah.
exactly. An experienced manager probably knows to go for the kill in those
Yeah.
situations. You're thinking of your Peps, your Klopps, your
Fergie would have done.
Fergusons,
Yeah, Fergie would have done.
Mourinho's. They
Yeah.
know, do it now. Like
Go for jugular. Yeah.
Mourinho's famous score is 2-0.
Yeah.
If you have 1-0, it means nothing. It might as well be 0-all to him. And I think with Southgate, if I put it this way, I think if Italy went 1-0 up in that instant and Mancini's there, he would have went for the jugular straight away.
Yeah.
But look, I don't think, I know you can be disappointed you've lost the final, but there has to be an underlying feeling of this is excitement now. And
Oh yeah,
what are you feeling before we wrap up? We're just
yeah,
hitting the 90-minute mark. What are you feeling about Qatar? Obviously, I mentioned something to you the other day about, you know, the English league doesn't take a break, you know,
yeah.
in
You're a good
winter.
point. Yeah.
Other
So
leagues in Europe do. So I think I think England have an advantage there. It's slight, whatever chance it may be, slight, but
yeah,
it's, you know, it can definitely help, can't it?
it can work in your favour. You've got to look at all aspects of what's going to help you and what's not. But me only obviously he's playing in them sort of conditions over there at that time and them sort of heat. So you start leaning towards the South American teams and
Yeah, true.
your teams with a bit of tournament experience in kind of dealing with them conditions.
Hmm.
And but again, come around to tournament, as we're going to get into it. What are we now? So we're in March now, coming to end of
Just
March.
April, yeah.
So you're coming up to November time, I think it starts. So you got about 7 or 8 months.
Yeah.
You've got to look at how the Premier League is doing as a standard and how the teams are performing in Europe. And we've certainly got the stronger players again. You kind of look at, obviously, France, we know France have got a good squad.
Yeah.
And you're still going to back that.
Brazil are really strong.
Brazil are looking stronger now, yeah. But yeah, the point that you made is massive. Where we don't have that winter break and we don't have that break in play. If anything, we play more football, don't we? Normally in them
We
months,
do, yeah.
and you
And,
talk,
you know, I'm no expert in sports science or anything like that, but physiologically,
yeah,
surely at that time of the year for the last 10 years as a footballer, if you know you wind down or you take a break where the English footballers don't, I'd love to get someone, you know, I might speak to someone, my brother-in-law, Alo, who we've had on previous podcasts, and get his opinion on whether that has an effect. You know,
it's got to
surely
do.
if
It's
you're
got
like
to
a
do.
Luke Shaw and you're playing in England your whole life, and at Christmas, you know, you have to give it that extra fucking 20% because you've, you know, probably 10 games in a 7 week period or whatever.
Yeah,
You know, that's what I'm trying to say. Surely that has to count for something where
it's
you,
got to do.
yes,
It's
you
got
know.
to do. Obviously, the draw's on Friday in it, so first and foremost, you've got to look at what Greek that you get handed to,
Mm.
and we go that. As for optimism goes, it's like the age old. I kind of have an argument with my dad every tournament. To be fair, is obviously he's been peeved off over years and he's got used to it happening. He says it happens all the time.
But
He started getting a bit of the
yeah,
the
yeah.
bug back kind of thing, but
He's seen a lot more disappointment
he's
though as
of
well,
course
like
he has, yeah, of course
70s
he
and
has.
80s and
But
stuff.
I
So
mean, for him to start getting slight itch and a bit of a butt bag, and I mean, listen, we might have lost in final that tournament, but I had a grin on my face because
yeah,
we got
that's
to,
kind of what I meant. Like it was a disappointment, but
yeah,
you're kind of back. You
yeah.
know, you're at that level again where you're challenging for the
Yeah, I think
tournaments.
Martin Tyler said it the other night when I were watching the Switzerland game on the Saturday. I think it could have even been last night. The Ivory Coast game is without taking it too far, and hopefully media don't hype it. There is a bit of a fear factor coming back now
Mm.
when teams are playing us now. Where when we used to play Spain and what have you in friendlies and we used to come up, we have a friendly, we batter all these teams in qualifiers, San Marino and all that, and then you play somebody half decent and England have come unstuck.
Yeah,
Now when you're playing them, it's kind of like, are they going to be good enough beat us? Because
yeah,
he's got such a mixture of players now where if Declan Rice can't play, Calvin Phillips can step in. If Calvin Phillips and Rice don't play together and you go more attacking, you've got Grealish, Foden,
Mount.
Sterling, Saka, Mount. It's
Yeah,
endless. Bellingham. If Bellingham doesn't start in World Cup, I'd be very, very surprised from
yeah.
what I've seen
I
recently.
watched them. I watched them. I think it was the Swiss game. Maybe I'm wrong. He played in that. Did he already came on
He
at some
came on,
stage?
he played a full game last night. He got man at Matt. He were awesome
Did he?
yesterday.
I didn't watch him yesterday, but I watched him
Yeah.
when he came on the Swiss game, and even in the few minutes he was there, he was excellent. You know what's funny? Before we just wrap this up, just about Declan Rice and Man United and this 150 million and stuff. I'd pay 150 million for Jude Bellingham
He would.
before I'd pay 150 million for Declan Rice.
Yeah.
He's so much more to his game. I know they're slightly different players, but it's just funny to me that he's not being considered. But
Wouldn't be bad having both of them, would it?
yeah, we definitely don't have the money for both. If West Ham want 150 million for Declan Rice,
Yeah.
but look, I'm going to ask you to make a prediction. I know it's very difficult because you don't know your group, you don't really
Yeah,
know your path, but
yeah,
where, let me rephrase it, would you be happy to make a semi-final?
yeah. Obviously, you go with progression, don't you? Semis in Worlds, final at Euro, so automatically you're thinking, well, we should be
Last
winning.
four.
Last four or winning this one.
Yeah.
Given the circumstances and given where we're playing, I'd be happy if we made a semi final. But also on the flip side of it, with the squad of players we've got, I'm getting to that point now where it's about time we stop worrying about other teams.
Yeah.
And let's them worry about what we've got.
Yeah.
Like instead of alt media going into games going, oh, you've got to watch out for Griezmann, Mbappe, and all this. You want the media going, can these deal with Grealish, Foden, Kane, Sterling when they're all on the game? And let's flip it and have a bit of positivity because the media I just over the years I've seen it. The poison, they are poison, and they do not help the lads. They, like you said, the beat before they start. They say it before the games even.
Yeah.
Oh, Maguire, why is
Exactly.
he playing and what
And
have you? But we'll see how it goes.
it,
Yeah, I'd be
it
happy with a
doesn't
semi.
help. You
I'd be
know,
happy with a semi, mate. But
you dirty bastard.
yeah, yeah. I'd
But
have a semi. I'll have a semi if we get a semi.
let's wrap it up there. So, look, pleasure having you on as always, man.
As always, mate. It's
We
been
won't
too
wait.
long.
We won't wait 6 months to get the next podcast up and
No,
running.
no, we'll
But
get them rolling now.
yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed that. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave us a comment if you enjoyed it. And if you have any, topics that you would like us to talk about, show them in the comments, and we'll be sure to look over them for next time.
We'll do the Irish one next time. It'll be about 25 minutes long.
Shit, I've been generous there. All right, mate. Good luck.
All
Thanks
right,
for
mate.
watching, guys.
See you later, bud.